Hello, kindergarten. Welcome back to my home and welcome back to my library. It's story time today, and for today's story, I've chosen my favorite book about my favorite scientist. I have a feeling you might already know who that is. Well, the reason I appreciate this scientist so much is because even though he was the smartest man in the world with a very big brain, he said that it didn't matter how big your brain is when you're trying to solve important problems. Along with having a brain of any size, you need to have a lot of curiosity and a lot of imagination. And that curiosity and that imagination will work together with your brain and help you solve important problems too. So sit back and get comfortable because we're going to read On a Beam of Light, a story of Albert Einstein by Jennifer Berne, illustrated by Vladimir Randunsky. Here's our title page, On a Beam of Light, a story of Albert Einstein by Jennifer Berne, pictures by Vladimir Randunsky. Over 100 years ago, as the stars swirled in the sky, as the earth circled the sun, as the March winds blew through a little town by a river, a baby boy was born. His parents named him Albert. Albert turned 1 year old and didn't say a word. Albert turned 2 and didn't say a word. Albert turned 3 and hardly said a word at all. He just looked around with his big, curious eyes, looked and wondered, looked and wondered. His parents worried. Little Albert was so different. Was there something wrong? But he was their baby, so they loved him no matter what. One day, when Albert was sick in bed, his father brought him a compass, a small round case with a magnetic needle inside. No matter which way Albert turned the compass, the needle always pointed north, as if held by an invisible hand. Albert was so amazed, his body trembled. Suddenly, he knew there were mysteries in the world, hidden and silent, unknown and unseen. He wanted, more than anything, to understand those mysteries. Albert started asking questions. Questions at home, questions at school, so many questions that some of his teachers told him he was a disruption to his class. They said he would never amount to anything unless he learned to behave like all the other students. But Albert didn't want to be like all the other students. He wanted to discover the hidden mysteries in the world. One day, as Albert was zipping through the countryside on his bicycle, he looked up at the beams of sunlight speeding from the sun to the earth. He wondered, what would it be like to ride one of those beams? And in his mind, right then and there, Albert was no longer on his bicycle, no longer on the country road. He was racing through space on a beam of light. It was the biggest, most exciting thought Albert had ever had, and it filled his mind with questions. Albert began to read and study. He read about light and sound, about heat and magnetism, and about gravity, the invisible force that pulls us down toward our planet and keeps the moon from floating away into outer space. When Albert graduated from college, he wanted to teach the subjects he loved, all the things he had read about all those years. But Albert couldn't find a job as a teacher, so he got another job, a simple, quiet job in a government office, an office where he worked with other people's ideas and inventions. He did his work very well and very quickly, so quickly that he had lots of extra time to think and wonder. Albert watched a lump of sugar dissolve and disappear into his hot tea. How could this happen? He watched the smoke from his pipe swirl and disappear into the air. How could one thing disappear into another? Then he began to figure it out. He thought about the idea that everything is made out of teeny tiny moving bits of stuff. Too far, too tiny to see. Little bits called atoms. Some people didn't believe that atoms existed, but Albert's figuring helped prove that everything in the world is made of atoms. Even sugar and tea. Even smoke and air. Even Albert and you. Albert wrote down his new ideas, put them into envelopes, and sent them to science magazines. The magazines printed everything Albert sent. He hoped that scientists and professors would be interested. And they were. Very interested indeed. They asked Albert to come work with them and teach with them. For the first time in his whole life, people started to say, Albert is a genius. Now Albert could spend all his days doing what he loved, imagining, wondering, figuring, and thinking. Thought about very, very big things, like the size and shape of the entire universe. He thought about very, very small things, like what goes on inside the atoms that everything is made of. He thought about mysterious forces like magnetism and gravity. He discovered whole new ways to understand how all these things work. Everywhere Albert went, he would think and think. One of Albert's favorite thinking places was his little sailboat. He loved to let his mind wander as the wind blew him across the water. Sometimes, when Albert was having a tough time with a tricky problem, he would put it aside and play his violin. Music made Albert happy. He said it helped him think better. In the town where he lived, he became known for wandering around deep in thought, sometimes eating an ice cream cone, always recognizable with his long wild hair, which by then had become quite white. Everywhere Albert went, he tried to figure out the secrets of the universe. And he never forgot about the beam of light that he rode so long ago in his imagination. Albert figured out that no person, no thing, could ever zoom through space as fast as a beam of light. Albert thought and figured until the very last minute of the very last day of his life. He asked questions never asked before, found answers never found before, and dreamed up ideas never dreamt before. Albert's ideas helped build spaceships and satellites that travel to the moon and beyond. His thinking helped us understand our universe as no one ever had before. But still, Albert left us with many big questions, questions that scientists are still working on today. And at the end of the book, there are some really interesting facts about Albert Einstein. For example, Albert Einstein always drank his tea out of a favorite blue cup. His favorite formula is one you might know. It goes like this: E equals mc squared. Albert Einstein's compass was always his favorite scientific tool. Albert Einstein smoked a pipe, but don't smoke a pipe just because Albert Einstein did, because that's actually not very smart. Albert Einstein had a violin and a bow, and he knew that if he played music, it would help calm his mind and give him a little bit more time to think about important questions. Albert Einstein wore favorite brown shoes every day and no socks. He never wore socks. You know why? He thought it was a waste of thinking time to take the time to put on socks. And Albert Einstein was always recognizable in his saggy baggy sweater and his saggy baggy pants. And that, kindergarten, is the end of our story for today. I hope that you have some questions in your mind right now. And I also hope that you will take some time to think about those questions for a good long time and use a lot of imagination. I have a feeling that you might be one of the next Albert Einsteins to solve mysteries of the universe using your curiosity and your imagination and what I know are your very big brains. Until we meet again, kindergarten, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.